country such as Venezuela, that is a country that has a glorious history. No one can take that away from us. That saying that no one can take what we danced away from us. It's a saying that says so much. No one can take that past from us, what we have done, what we have through our bloods, that we are the liberators of our continent. And we say that humbly, but we also say it so pleased in ourselves. We do not have pride or ego, but we are pleased with that truth, and that the truth is said about a country that is pacific and pacifist in essence, that with a great effort it has moved forward and overcome, because no one has gifted us with anything that we have yesterday or today. No one gifted us with our identity, our independence. We conquered that, our republic. Our armies walked over 80,000 kilometers to fight the biggest struggles and to fight in Junín and Ayacucho, and whoever fought those battles lived there. They were from the highlands, and they came from Caracas, from the western sides of the country, from Guyana, from the east as well. It's a pacifist country. Please get that phrase for me, because it's a beautiful, beautiful phrase. A man that led the independence of South America in a scene of combat of a broad perspective in the history of humanity, not only and not even Alejandro Magno, that was Bolivar. He was there to conquer. Bolivar was there to liberate, and he was a liberator that went to the highest extremes in order to give the freedom to the slaves, something that was not even conceived in the minds of many of those who lived at that time. He had great conflicts with one of the and some of the highest military officers, because they couldn't see life without slavery. But for us now, that is unthinkable. Who can think of having a slave right now? Imagine having that conversation, that we go to a lunch and we say, how are your slaves behaving? That is over. That was completely done with. In that time, the people who lived at that time, they thought that slavery was a God-given right, and Bolivar went past those notions. So we are a libertarian people. Here we are the libertarians, the liberators. We are a rebellious people. Whoever wants to submit us, you know the answer from a Venezuelan. You see the men who were kidnapped at the Secot from Bukele in El Salvador. They were kidnapped and they were here. We did all the deals we had to do to liberate them, and we had negotiations and pressure with the U.S. government that they had to hand them back, and I think that they did their part because they conquered their freedom. They were tortured daily, and they were rebellious morning, day, and night, and every time that the person came, they were screaming, freedom, freedom. No one is saying that we need to make a movie out of that. Yáñez, Ernesto Villegas, we need to do that movie. Series from the kidnapping, the torture, and the liberation of the 252 Venezuelans that were at the concentration camp of Nayib Bukele. I think that would be a great success. You know where? in the US in particular, in El Salvador, because people want to see truth, they want to know the truth, to experience what truth is, because if you do not experience what truth is, then you're just a fraud. So Venezuela is fighting a great battle for freedom and for truth.
¿Qué hemos hecho en esta semana? Ustedes son testigos. Hace 5 semanas exacto, Venezuela fue amenazada con barcos misilísticos, con submarino nuclear y con bombardear, invadir y ocupar el país. Hace 5 semanas, Nicolas Maduro, presidente constitucional de Venezuela y líder revolucionario de nuestra América, este señor, este muchacho que ustedes vieron ahí en el liceo donde él empezó su camino hace 50 años exactamente, fue amenazado junto
together with Chavez and his colleagues by some cowboys, using the method of the cowboys. And what have we done all these weeks to unite the people of Venezuela, to empower the people of Venezuela, to train the Venezuelan people, and from the Venezuelan streets to tell them our truth. We are a people of work with good spirits. We are patriots, and we are an honest people. We are revolutionary, and we say it with pride and strength. We are revolutionaries of the 21st century, and we are persecuted. And I felt that yesterday, Celia Flores, my wife, that's how I felt it as well today, and that's how I'm feeling it right now, coming from that school. When I met there with the boy that 50 years ago took his first step with 12 years to join a popular movement, a revolutionary movement that was led by a revolutionary I did not know. I did not know him, but I joined because I had a vocation. Our school was always 50 years ago, and still is today, the people, the streets, to say it as we said it 50 years ago. The popular grassroots, we today call them the people. That's our school. That's where we come from. I said once and 1,000 times, I've never been, I'm not, nor I want to be a tycoon, multimillionaire. I've not had, I don't have, and I will not have wealth. That's not what inspires me as a human, as a leader, to accumulate hotels, casinos, or wealth. What inspires us is to accumulate millions of conscious here in the world, millions of wills here in the world. If I want to be a multimillionaire, it's going to be a multimillionaire of peoples, of organized and mobilized people building a new society, facing all the war-minded and warmongers that aim to slave the world. So it's very important, the battle that we are giving to preserve peace, and this is for everyone. And that's what I asked yesterday an analyst, that because I see different media, and I check everything that I see. So you will never see me showing a video without a previous study. I was seeing some analysts yesterday, regarding this issue of the U.S. aggression against Venezuela, and how important it is that Venezuela has known how to preserve peace, because we have a strategy, a plan. We have a high command that is wise within politics, military and civilian structures that fights and works, and we have been able to face different circumstances in these 5 weeks, and for each of them we have dealt with them accordingly to preserve with dignity and under the Constitution mandate to guarantee territorial integrity and sovereignty. We work to preserve peace for all Venezuelans. 5 weeks later of this aggression that still today many media qualify as tensions, because I'm going to tell you how some media headlines: Maduro does military exercises and increases tensions against the U.S. That was Saturday. Saturday, Maduro calls people to the barracks and raises tension in the Caribbean. So, and what are we supposed to do? When 8 warships are right there across, pointing 1,200 missiles against us with a nuclear submarine as well. And according to the governor of Puerto Rico, the whole island of Puerto Rico is ready to invade Venezuela. That's what the governor is saying, because they have over there over 100 F-35 warplanes, and they have thousands of soldiers. The whole island, with the governor at the head. The governor will come in one of those destroyers to disembark here in La Guaira. Imagine that that's what they're going to do. The governor from Puerto Rico. What are we supposed to do? This resembles a lot the joke that I always remember of a Christian. You probably have heard this before. So, pardon me if I say it again. A Christian is persecuted, vilified, humiliated for following Christ the Redeemer as we do. So it's a Christian, ICE capture him over there walking down the streets of Rome. ICE, the institution that persecutes Christians. So they took him to the Roman Colosseum, a spectacular structure. Well, the Romans built those Colosseums for different activities, and one of those activities was to humiliate those that they wanted to humiliate. In this case, was a Christian. So they had a Christian tied in their hands and legs. He could not walk. They put him in the middle, at the center of the arena. They dig a hole, put him inside, and only leave the head over the arena, and then they release a lion, a big lion. The lion circles him, and in one of those, the lion gets distracted, and the Christian, with all his efforts, raises his head and bites a testicle, and he begins to bite down that testicle, and the lion begins to scream. And people begin from the Colosseum to screaming, yelling at the Christian, saying, "Cheater, play fair." And that's how the media is treating us. Venezuela is exercising the legitimate right, according to international law and the Constitution, to prepare itself for defense, for peace. We exercise our right to defend. And we do it fully. It's not tension. It's aggression, a judicial aggression. When they are criminalizing us, it's a political aggression with their threatening daily declarations. It's a diplomatic aggression and it is on the way to a military aggression, and Venezuela is prepared and allowed in accordance to international law to face these aggressions. So it's not tensions, it's aggression. We, of course, within Venezuela, we are living. Over the weekend, there were over 300 concerts. The eastern region celebrate the Virgin of the Valley as they always do, with concerts, dances, with joy. Our people continues to work. I decree once more another year to bring forward Christmas, and this they say it again. Maduro brings forward Christmas once more, and it's a call for Christ, and it's a vaccine of joy against the psychological warfare that tries to sadden us. And no one here is sad or bitter. Our people is ready to fight, and is doing so happily, with security and serenity. If life decides to put us on the path to take up arms to begin a fight against an imperialist aggression, our people will do so with joy and serenity, because we're going to be defending the most sacred thing that we have on this land, our history. So we are fighting for peace. What are they fighting for? They are not fighting for peace. They have as an excuse pure lies, as has been demonstrated by data of the European Union, of different international organizations, of the UN organizations against crime and drugs, the DEA and the International Customs Organization. Pure lies against Venezuela. And with lies, we want to create a dossier that justifies an escalation, that justifies a military intervention, and justifies the attack against Venezuela, a criminal attack. So these 5 weeks, I believe, have been very fruitful. So I congratulate the Bolivarian National Armed Forces for their moral, for their cohesion, for their discipline, and their capacity to act. I congratulate our people as a whole. And well, we are here at the disposal to answer any question, any doubts that you may have, to enrich this battle of ideas for the right that Venezuela has to peace, to tranquility. Welcome once more.
Thank you, Mr. President. To begin this cycle of questions, the journalist from New York Times, United States. Thank you so much for the invitation. First question. There are a lot of doubts still. There's a lot of doubts about what happened on September 2nd. I wanted to ask you about the details about that attack that, according to the U.S., caused the death of 11 Venezuelans. I want to ask you if this attack happened, if we had 11 disappeared people, what were they doing? Where was that vessel going? 2 weeks ago, you described the communication with the U.S. government communication as wary, so I wanted to ask you if that relation has been reestablished and if there are ongoing negotiations regarding what is happening. Right. Regarding the supposed attack to a vessel allegedly Venezuelan that the President of the United States presented with a video, the first thing that we need to say is that the person who has to investigate this is the President of the United States. The U.S. President needs to order an investigation led by himself regarding who provided that video, because it was very grave that someone would hand a video to the president to share on a social media platform without verifying the data, because they wrote and put very hard words on the mouth and publication of the United States. He announced those deaths. No one else, no U.S. organism has announced that there were 11 casualties there. The video requests a high-level investigation from the White House. I hope and I ask God that this is the case. Second place, it's been the object of a debate. I took some distance from this debate. I read the New York Times every day in English and in Spanish, and several times a day. The U.S. journalism is dense and full of details. And I comment this with Celia, because you can be half an hour reading an article and they are really good and detailed, and there's a great debate and across the U.S. press and U.S. society through social networks and the world society as well. And in that debate you had three positions. The first one, that it was an artificial intelligence generated video, because the video shows modifications compatible with artificial intelligence. It's not me who says it. Gemini said this, and different mechanisms as well. Secondly, there's been also very similar videos, such as this one that we're talking about, that someone handed over to President Trump and published on his account. Videos that are very similar to videos from other years and from other places in the world, from 2020, 2021, from the Arab world. And in the third place, we have the debate regarding that if it were true, if there was the assassination of 11 people that they said were Venezuelans, that investigation in Venezuela is underway. That investigation, we are waiting for it to end so that we can give our results. And I understand as well that in the U.S. Congress, a group of senators and congressmen and women have asked for the details of that attack, because they understand that we have army chiefs and institutional chiefs, that if the Venezuelan armed forces handed me a video, this is very important, if the armed forces handed me a video, before sharing it, I would investigate it to the very last detail regarding any event. This attack that they say was carried out against a group of people that were at this boat is seriously questioned, and a great majority of the people say that this is an outrageous crime. Right. Because a vessel was attacked that supposedly they thought was maybe committing a crime, but they jumped from that presumption to the death penalty. We in the Caribbean, we have a lot of experience, and the United States with its Coastal Guard has a lot of experience as well in the interdiction between the Marine and also in the Air Force, dealing with drug trafficking, dealing with smugglers, dealing with smuggling of any type, smuggling fuel, for example, because fuel in Venezuela is very, very cheap, and that's very common for a lot of time through the Caribbean, through sea. Also, product smuggling as well, that they're carrying different type of products, and drug traffickers as well. today, at this moment, just before coming here, I was informed of a great success because we have just intervened legally a vessel that had 3,600 cocaine kilograms. At this moment, this is happening, and we rounded them. We used the proportional force mandated by justice, and we have captured those people, and the produce has been seized as well. And we will, of course, proceed to destruction. This is in real time. So truly, this calls for an investigation at the highest level. Why does this video, a military type video, and the official information that they are giving is that it was a military attack? This means that it was calculated and then filmed through various cameras, an attack that over people that weren't at war, weren't threatening military any country. If they were committing a crime, they have laws. In every countries of the Caribbean and the region, we have laws. From the United States to Trinidad, we have laws for the intervention of an ongoing crime, for criminals at sea, criminals in air and at land. And laws work. So the investigation here is open. When we have the results, we will provide them in full, as we always do, with the truth. And I hope that from this investigation, justice is done in the United States, in the world, and here.
The next question, well, sorry, I was missing the second part of the question. I described that communication relations with the U.S. government. There were two channels, and they were having a hard time right now. I can announce today that communications with the U.S. government are completely gone by them because of their threats and bombs and death and blackmail. That's not how we work. With threats, you will never get anything. And they know this well. So they went from bad relations of communications to inexistent relations of communications. And history will be witness. Thank you, Mr. President. Now we give the floor to teleSUR journalist Madeleine Garcia. Greetings, Mr. President. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino warned Trinidad and Tobago that to lend their territory to the U.S. to attack Venezuela, there will be reciprocal actions. Are there any communications with these countries? What situations are being managed for the minister to carry out that warning? Regarding the assault on the fishing boat, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I cannot listen. It seems the microphone is not connecting. So, there was an assault that the Venezuelan government denounced to a fishing vessel. What guarantees are to continue carrying out fishing activities in that economic exclusive zone? And other U.S. allies have moved their fleets in other parts of the Caribbean. Do you have any information on that? That other countries, allies of the U.S., like Netherlands and the United Kingdom, have moved fleets in the Caribbean. Do you have any information on that? Well, I'm going to begin with the last question. Normally, the economic exclusive zone, you have the territorial sea, and then according to international laws, that were created in the last 70, 80 years, there's something that all countries establish with limits with their neighboring countries, which is the economic exclusive zone. To go through the economic exclusive zone, this is always coordinator, an oil tanker, a shipping, a container ship, the Netherlands, because the Netherlands have Curacao. Normally, they are moving ships around, but we always coordinate. There are protocols for that coordination. And the same with all countries in the world. They coordinate with their protocols, with respect. I need to go with a ship through there, and we give the permission. So until now, that has functioned properly. The only that constantly violates international law of the passing of ships through economic exclusive zones of many countries of the continent is the United States of America. It's not only with Venezuela, it's with numerous countries of the Caribbean. And well, we have put quotas for years on that, thanks to the exercise of sovereignty on behalf of our Navy. In the first question, where the first minister of Trinidad and Tobago went crazy. She went crazy because she was threatening that she was going to authorize attacks from Trinidad and Tobago against Venezuela. That's like declaring war against Venezuela. I'm certain that the people of Trinidad and Tobago are against this. We are neighboring countries. You know that Trinidad and Tobago was sold by the Spanish Empire to the British Empire few years before the independence of Venezuela. So very early, we were one single community. The lives in the Caribbean Sea and the coast of the state Sucre, Trinidad and Tobago, has been a life of cooperation and brotherhood. It's only now when this lady comes in, there has never been a governor of Trinidad and Tobago to threaten a war against Venezuela. Who is behind this? Who is imposing the intrigue? Who's whispering in the ears of this lady? How is she able to declare this? Who is behind all this? Marco Rubio, of course. The death lord and warlord, that's how he's being described. Wherever he goes, there are dead bombs, dead children. The lord of death and war, of hate, Marco Rubio. So Trinidad and Tobago, all his sectors and political sectors and cultural, economic, and its people, they must impose once more relations of respect. Simple as that. They must impose relations of respect. And we will see. We have defense plans, and the armed forces have announced a part of that. We have defense plans that escalate. There are different lines, and Venezuela can be certain, completely certain, that we will guarantee our sovereignty and preserve peace of our country. Now, on the vessel, the fishing vessel of tuna, that on Friday, right? Friday, we were in a meeting on Friday with the Joint Chief of Staff of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces. The Executive Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, was there as well, the Vice President Diosdado. We were doing a briefing of what happened on Thursday in the Operation Plan Independence 200, which was a tremendous success. And we were preparing the day of Saturday, the plan for Saturday, that people go to the barracks. And that's when we got the information in real time with videos and audios that a small boat of the dozens of fishing tuna boats that go daily to work in coordination with the authorities of the Venezuelan authorities to the economic exclusive zone, was being threatened by radio, was being boarded and raided by a group of U.S. Marines, heavily armed. Very quickly, the boat was given the direction through the military channels to remain calm, and that they continued to report on what was happening. They were able to report until the moment of the boarding. A group of 18 U.S. Marines, specialized Marines, assaulted a group of tuna fishers, and they were kidnapped for 8 hours in high seas in jurisdiction waters of Venezuela. This is embarrassing. It's embarrassing for the international community. It's embarrassing for the military honor of the U.S. military forces. In the United States, this has been said. Fight drug trafficking with U.S. missile destroyers. When has this been done in the world? What country has done this in the world? Not a single one. It's completely without logic. Overkill to send a destroyer, that's how they refer to it, a destroyer vessel, so that the name instills fears. A destroyer is coming and everyone is supposed to run. A missile destroyer with 380 professionals of the highest military standard that study for years to be able to operate those weapon systems, taking 2 boats with heavy machine guns to raid a small fishing vessel. If we did a video for TikTok, they will say that we are exaggerating. It will be something almost funny. The behavior of the Venezuelan fishermen was exemplary. Patience, they were very patient and they were calm. And some may wonder, may ask what they were looking for. Tuna. Did they not have fish in their ship? What were they looking for? The soldiers did not know what they were looking for. Who gave the order? One can ask here to the generals and admirals. A military operation of that type, of that kind, someone gave the order in Washington. Who gave the order in Washington so that a U.S. missile destroyer sent 18 U.S. Marines to raid a fishing vessel, to threaten a fishing vessel at high sea? Who gave that order? Has this happened before? We must ask ourselves. You are people that like to investigate and research. Delcy, Gabriela, Alfred Nazare. Is there a precedent somewhere in the world that this has ever happened? That a missile destroyer sends its soldiers, its expert missile soldiers, to raid tuna fishing boats. So what were they looking for? I have nothing to say about it. If the tuna fishermen would have had any kind of weapon and use weapons within Venezuelan jurisdiction waters, that would have been the incident that they are looking for, that the warmongers are looking for, to have a war in the Caribbean. So I wonder, I ask in Washington, who gave the order to try to create this incident? And this has to be in the papers of the operations. Who gave the order in Washington? that they remained for 8 hours, because they could have said, to justify a narrative, they could have said, well, we went there because that ship looked dangerous in front of our shipment, a gigantic shipment. And we went there to see that they had no weapons, which is illegal already because they are in jurisdiction waters that belong to Venezuela. But it's a narrative that at least would have a possibility to be believed. But that they remained 8 hours there, threatening the fishermen with their weapons, they were looking for that incident. A helicopter overflew, that it has been doing it for several times now, that area in the north. Every time that helicopter takes off, we see it, and the ship is also there. They were searching for an incident, so that it went from a minor incident to a major incident. And you know that our Bolivarian National Armed Forces is in the full exercise of sovereignty in that region, and they have not fallen in provocations, nor will we fall in provocations, with serenity, with tranquility, with strategic wisdom. Personally, all these situations looked over thanks to the professionals of Venezuela that have the highest training, strategic training, to handle conflicts and situations like this.
A minor incident, from a minor incident to a major incident. Remember the incidents that they created themselves. They attacked the main vessel in Cuba. They exploded that. Then afterwards, in time, they found out who gave that order in Maine in order to intervene in the independence war, a war that the Cubans had already won with the Mambi's army. They were at the doors of that victory, and they attacked also in the Tonkin Gulf. In 1964, if I'm not mistaken. And they said that it was a fleet of vessels from North Vietnam, and then they went into an 11-year war with thousands of U.S. soldiers killed and also Vietnamese civilians killed with napalm. And whoever does not know how that army from the U.S. came out of Saigon, you can look it up in YouTube, how the great Ho Chi Minh built that great popular and civil military power that led them to a victory. In Iraq, what they built is that they had massive weapons of destruction that is still in the memory of those who write and who do. And we do not have to extend ourselves with that memory, but they were looking for an incident, and they will continue to look for such incidents. In Panama, for example, what was their excuse? To put 5,000 Marines, 200 helicopters, and murder 3,000 Panamanians in the Chorrillo neighborhood in Panama. The testimony is still alive of how people were sleeping at their houses and were murdered, elderly and kids, women and men in the Chorrillo neighborhood. The helicopters went through the neighborhood, shooting at everything in order to target that beloved people of Panama, the Panama of Torrijos. What was the incident? What was the excuse? A quarrel between the police from Panama and the soldiers, and then we don't know what happened, but we saw 2 U.S. soldiers who appeared dead, and with that, they gave the order of attack, and then we know that that incident was made them, and here they are trying to create an incident because we do not understand that violation, that assault on the vessel, the violation of the Venezuelan jurisdiction on the seas, the presence of a structure that cost millions a week to maintain it here in the Caribbean Sea, and we cannot understand why they made and they remained for 8 hours inside a fisherman vessel just so that at night they said, okay, bye, we're leaving. And also they lied. They lied because we have old protocols from 1991 from Carlos Andrés Pérez government that had a cooperation agreement in the Caribbean Sea, so that if the U.S. Army comes one way, then someone calls and alarms this, and someone gives the authorization. So they told the fishermen, I do not want to show that videos from the fishermen because I don't want to expose them, the fishermen. But they told them, we are in coordination with Caracas. I don't know who in Caracas, but definitely with the civilian authorities, police authorities, military authorities, never. They never communicated an action, because if they had, we would have told them, get outside of Venezuela, go outside of our seas, these are our seas. Now, I spoke and I sent a message, and I send a message to every fisherman from that great tuna fish, a healthy tuna fish, not genetically modified, one of the healthiest one in the world, to the Pargo fishermen. Let's continue our daily work. Just as I said on Saturday, let's continue our daily work fishing so that the sector continues to grow as the entire Venezuelan economy is growing. 3 questions, 3 answers. From CNN in Spanish. Good afternoon. First question, a precision to a question before. When you were saying that the communication channels were broken, I wanted to know if this is at zero level with Richard Grenell and the ambassador as well, with whom you said you had communication. And also, I wanted to know if President of the United States, Donald Trump, he spoke of Venezuela. He said that the election of 2024 was an incorrect election, and he said he compared it to the 2020 election in the U.S., and he didn't discard attacks in Venezuelan territory. I want to know your reaction on these comments, and also the limits that could change from the diplomatic channel to another type of measures. And also, the public ministry revealed a report in which they were investigating on corruption cases. I wanted to know if you had any information on this. Right. Very, very good questions, the 4 questions. The communications, they are broken at this moment. It's not our responsibility. We kept our word. We are people of dialogue and peace. But we do not respond to psychological wars, to extortions and threats. We respond to truth and to dialogue. If I tell you one thing, you tell me another. So we cannot allow for something to be said and then something completely different and happens. with this administration, nothing changes for the good. They're changing for the bad. And I'm not talking about Venezuela, I'm talking about the world. So tell me, if you look at the globe, tell me one country that can rely on the word of this U.S. administration. We have done a great effort with every administration, but if there's no seriousness and we have no word to keep, it cannot go right. I will speak to you sincerely. Conversations are not at zero level, but they have taken a hard hit. We have a threat, a basic threat, with Mamara, he's a soldier, he was there. Manamara is not a diplomat, he's a soldier. He was present in the Middle East interventions, and he's in Bogota. He goes through military actions. He's maintaining minimum communication in order for us to bring our migrants back, because that is one of our greatest priority from the Venezuelan family, to rescue from the kidnapping and torture to any migrants that have been kidnapped by the ICE forces in the United States. We will bring all of them back. They still have over 60 young kids that they haven't still delivered. 1-year-old kids, 2-year-old kids, babies that they have taken from their families. Who can explain that? Regretfully, the human rights organizations, the UN organizations for human rights, already denounced by people around the world, because Volker Turk is an accomplice of the genocide in the Palestinian territories led by the Israeli regime. And let not only speak of Venezuela, Volker Turk only speaks of Venezuela whatever the administration mandates. But the fact that you have babies kidnapped in the United States, well, Volker Turk is not making any statements regarding that, and that silence is criminal, and it's an accomplice, and Volker Turk is one of those responsible and guilty for this kidnapping, because his inaction is making the way for the UN to be rendered useless. We hope to rescue that UN one day. So regarding the opinion of President Donald Trump in terms of the internal affairs of Venezuela, no one needs to make any opinion regarding our affairs. He says that the system of the U.S. politics is corrupt. I'm not going to speak of their system. So I think that it's best that everyone take care of their own country. He needs to deal with his own electoral system that he says is corrupt. And we are dealing with our system that it's a direct democracy, a democracy of every day. We do not have a medieval, bourgeois, and oligarchy democracy. We could have a debate. I could open up a debate with whoever wants to have this debate in the world. It would be even a good thing that we had a debate between the President of the United States and myself, the constitutional President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, regarding democracy, for example, regarding the economy, regarding the world model, and the right to peace, for example. It would be very instructive, even though this will not pass from this commentary, that will not become a reality. What is the limit that could change the situation? There's always a lot of limits, not just one. When we have one of these processes underway, well, we need to take care of the details, and we need to prepare so that with serenity we can face whatever comes. With nerves of steel, as I always tell our people, These 5 weeks we have made the most of this time, and we can say 5 weeks later that today we have more national power, we have more unity, we are better prepared to preserve in any case and in any circumstance, even if we need to go to the armed struggle to defend our independence and to build peace in new circumstances. We are stronger than yesterday today. We are much stronger than yesterday. And hoping for what we always hope for, and that's peace. And loving and preserving the greatest wealth that we have, that is peace. Bolivar used to say, Bolivar, the great statesman, the greatest warrior that humanity has had. 3 great warriors we had in history: Jesus Christ, Don Quixote, and myself. He led wonderful armies. That history, we haven't even begun to teach it as well. Here we've had an exposition in Aragua and Carabobo. If you haven't seen that in Caracas, you have that to take a trip to Aragua and Carabobo to see it. It's so little what we know about Bolivar right now. And when I say Bolivar, I mean that generation, that people, those 3 decades, first decades from the 19th century. And Bolivar used to say in a letter to Santander, 1820, "Peace will be my port, my glory, my reward, my joy, and everything that is precious to me in this world." And we defend our right to peace as our greatest reward. We are ready to defend it in the circumstances that may be, and we are better prepared today than 5 weeks ago. I'll never put a word over what is true. I always try to be prudent in this, but we are much better prepared because we have millions of men and women training, preparing themselves to defend the great homeland if they be able to create this incident and make an aggression towards and upon a peaceful people like the Venezuelan people. I ask God that He bless us and protect us with His miracles, the peace of Venezuela. And the 4th question, I am not truly informed regarding that topic at this moment, but we will of course gather the information to make a statement.
Well, now journalist Marco Salgada from Hispan TV from the Republic of Iran. Good afternoon, Mr. President. I have 3 questions. On the one hand, can this situation, these provocations, U.S. presence in the Caribbean, could lead to a blockade against Venezuela? Could that be the plan that affects ships that enter and exit Venezuela? I want also to ask, what is the message you have for the U.S. people, taking into account that we see a millionaire deployment, a war deployment of warships that cost millions, and there is an impact in U.S. society. There is an important sector in the U.S. that do not want war, and they have stated it. And finally, how do you notice the solidarity that you have received from different countries like Russia, Iran, China, some countries and BRICS countries? How could this Venezuela insist right now for entering BRICS? I'm going over here because there are so many news updates right now. The Council for Cooperation of the Gulf coordinated to create a defense council following the Israeli attack on Doha. It's live news right now, happening right now. President Trump said 300 million people died due to drugs that were brought in by Venezuela. Maduro leads the start of the new school year. These are the headlines. In what can it lead? What can it lead to? Well, anything. When you in your countries, in your homes, put a room and fill it with powder and gasoline, what can happen? You can prosper, or it could be something terrible. If we're at homes in the Caribbean, pay attention, our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, all the nations of the Caribbean, Caribbean as a whole, Mexico, Honduras, Great Caribbean. If our home, Great Caribbean, is filled of powder and missiles, that can lead, Marco, in a catastrophe, in a great war in the Caribbean, that which has never occurred before, and should not ever have occurred. This war will be a war for a regime change, for oil, for gold, for gas, for the wealth, for the resources of Venezuela. It is a lie what they're saying, that from Venezuela we send great quantities of drugs. That's a lie. President Trump mistook in the number. He said 300 millions, and it's not. It's 100,000 that died yearly, and it's unfortunately all these people that die due to drugs, but drugs like fentanyl, synthetic drugs, which are the ones that are destroying massively U.S. consumers and European consumers. So it's a group of elements that are all false. These are all narratives to justify an escalation, but the objective is not the fight on drugs. The objective is to come in and take over Venezuela and impose colonial authorities in Venezuela and carry out a regime change in Venezuela to seize the immense wealth of oil and gas that Venezuela has. That's the objective. Because if they truly care the fight against drugs, the figures are there. The figures are clear, and we have shown it a lot. I did not bring the maps today, but the figures are clear. Cocaine is produced in Colombia. Because of whom? Because of the Colombian oligarchy that is allied with the United States, beginning with a gentleman called Álvaro Uribe Vélez, allied and agent of the U.S., Iván Duque, that lives in Washington, in a comfortable home, put there by the U.S. government thanks as payment for his services to the U.S., Iván Duque. They built an economy dependent of cocaine. Álvaro Uribe Vélez is in all documents. If the White House wanted to really look for it, he's in all the documents of the 80s as a lieutenant of Pablo Escobar. Álvaro Uribe Vélez, as head of an institution in charge of aeronautics in Medellin, legalized all the planes that carry cocaine in the 80s to the US. But it is there. And then he fulfilled the dream of Pablo Escobar, that a member of the Medellin cartel entered the Colombian presidency. They degraded the Colombian policy. And they set up a system. How many hectares are sown of cocaine? Over 400,000 hectares. And all the cocaine that goes to the United States and in great part to Europe is produced in our brotherly, beloved Colombia. The only president that has faced with a new strategy, a plan, that situation is the current president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro. This is Vox Populi in Colombia. This is not something I'm discovering right now. Colombia knows this. And in the United States they do as well. They know it. They know it very well. Now, if you say that Venezuela sends that poison to there, that's lies. Pure lies. We do not produce it. There are single hectares of cocaine plantations here in Venezuela. In operations on the border, they set up 3 hectares where they were going to start to grow cocaine, but what did we do? We took it away. We eliminated 3 hectares that were on the borderline. That is a borderline that is not even set. There are no laboratories for production here in Venezuela. And when we find one, we destroy it. And with the territorial presence of our military, or we bombed it with drones or with the aviation. So it is a lie. Here it is. Well, we must always show this. You know, as journalists, we must reiterate always. Here we have it. Where does this come from? All the cocaine, 87% goes through the Pacific. What is even worse, 70% of cocaine that leaves Colombia goes through Ecuador. And the ships and navy that have been captured in the United States and Europe say that belongs to the company of Noboa, the fraudulent president of Ecuador. I won't hide this. From Venezuela, we are always going to say the truth. 8% goes out La Guajira from Colombia, and barely 5% tries to go through Venezuela. And as you saw today, we seize legally and perfectly executed, because we are truly taking care of our seas. We seize 3,700 kilograms of cocaine of the highest purity. So we continue to move forward, and Venezuela, hopefully next year, we reach 100% free of any kind of drug trafficking or presence of these terrorist groups in Venezuela. This is the truth. So, do you think that repeating a lie thousands of times will turn it into a truth? That won't work with Venezuela. 1,000 times repeated lie against Venezuela will go back to you and will bite. We demand an end to the lies. They repeat and repeat and repeat to see if it sticks, and it falls. And well, as the Vice President was saying in the previous press conference, all those synthetic drugs have a different origin and are more destructive and deadly than all others known drugs. Fentanyl and all that. They cannot accuse Venezuela not even of having a pill. I'm sure they probably thought of it. Let's accuse Venezuela of using fentanyl. I'm sure they thought of it. And marijuana even less. Didn't you see that they came up with this idea that a plane that was traveling from Venezuela with marijuana in a neighboring country they remain silent. They did not repeat the news. If you want to look for marijuana, go there in the US. They are producing the super synthetic marijuana, which is legal. It's legal, the production and consumption of marijuana in the United States. What are you going to say about Venezuela? You have no morals to speak of Venezuela. In Venezuela, it continues to be illegal and will continue to be illegal. We won't put as a trend, we won't carry out the stupid trend of legalizing drugs. We will never do that. And you forgive my passion, but these are issues that inspire passion, because we must protect the youth. And when I was at that school earlier today, I was amazed by those children and youth. I want them to sing, to be part of culture, to be an example for the family, for the society, for them to have a prosperous future as workers, entrepreneurs. The issue of public health, where is it in the United States? Unfortunately, I always say unfortunately, because I regret, truly, it hurts me when I know that someone, for example, has an alcohol issue, is an alcoholic, because it's a disease, it's a dependency. And when someone has an issue of drugs, it hurts me. I remember a young man from my street. He was a colleague from the street. He moved. We had like 12, 13 years, and he moved to the area. And I don't know how that boy from one day to the other began using drugs. At that time, there was something that was called mantras, which was a synthetic drug, one of the first that existed in the 80s, that ended with X-Mantrax. And that young boy, 3 months later, he died. That was truly painful for us. We were friends with his sisters and brothers and his family. When one is that age, a mother is the mother of all, and we are children of all. And that's a pain that never went away. With that young man, we played football and basketball. Was a friend. And it hurt a lot. And it hurts a lot when I know that someone has an issue of addiction, and our concern is the medical procedure to be able to save people that are in this situation. The United States has a serious issue of public health, and the President of the United States of America, that I know that is a man that knows, that loves to fight addiction, that has this feeling that I have, this sentiment, he should also ask for a plan to face the issue of addiction that millions of men and women have in the United States. As that is being fought for and faced, and at the same time we fight drug trafficking, in a very short time, I say in 4 or 5 years, we will see a rebirth of humanity. And that issue will disappear, which exists in Western culture, because it's mainly in Western culture that there is this issue of addiction and the use of synthetic drugs. In social media, they legalize this. Social media is a great opportunity for communication. It's also a great danger, because one of the things that they try through different means, you know it very well, journalists. There are studies in the world where they try to impose an idea through videos. They try to promote the use of drugs, the consumption of pornography, and suicide. There's studies in social media that have proof in certain videos and contents that promote people to consume drugs, pornography, violence, suicide. Well, we had a lot of cases here like 2 years ago in the schools. So Venezuela must work strongly to defend its truth. Our message to the people of the United States that we send every day, I insist this a lot, Alfredo Nazaret the Foreign Minister Ivan Hill, Vice President, to the whole team. I have a very good team, that we must carry our message to the people of the United States. And I always ask questions. I don't know if that message reached. I make the questions. And if they are translated, I hope they reach them. I ask the U.S. people, are you going to let yourself be deceived once more so that a new war begins in South America and the Caribbean that involves the United States once more in another eternal war? That's my great question. Are you going to let yourself be deceived again by lies on Venezuelan drug trafficking to justify what cannot be justified, and use the U.S. military force to attack fishermen? I hope, as it has happened in other times in history, a great movement rises, a movement of public opinion, a social movement for peace and against war in South America and the Caribbean, against Venezuela. And the U.S. people overcomes common sense, because the great majority, I saw a poll 3-4 days ago, because of those studies that are always studying different topics of the U.S., and over 68% of the U.S. says that they don't want to be part of another world. So it's not only the MAGA movement, it's the immense majority of the independents, Democrats, and Republicans. 68% of U.S. citizens do not want to be part of another world. It's a strong position. They are tired of war. And well, with the favor of God, we might be able to get our message to the United States.
Regarding solidarity, I think it's been good. Today we have more solidarity and voices of support across the world that we had 5 weeks ago. Today, many people understand today why the attacks on Venezuela, why the attacks on Maduro. Many people, because this has been so evident, so outrageous. It's not believable. No one thinks and believes what they've said about me and what they've said about Venezuela, that I'm worth more than Bin Laden, for example. That I'm worth more or the same than great football players. And any moment they'll say I'm worth more than Messi, and that would be very unfair, of course. No one believes those attacks, so outrageous. So many people are starting to turn the pages and go back and see what they said and pretended on us for the past years, when Obama declared Venezuela as a possible threat, unusual threat, and extraordinary for the security of the United States 10 years ago exactly. And well, I have taken the initiative, and I want to announce I have sent several presidents of Latin America and the Caribbean. The first one was the president of CELAC, Gustavo Petro, so that urgently in Latin America and the Caribbean, a conference be summoned, a special conference for sovereignty and peace in the Caribbean, and that the CELAC takes the lead in this intense process of conversation and dialogue in order to enforce the declaration of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. The first letter was handed in hand to the President of Colombia and also President of CELAC, Gustavo Petro. The letter is already circulating. I know that it has reached many countries and has been handed over. And I hope that this initiative regarding politics with capital P and diplomacy towards peace, I hope that it leads the way of preventive action so that we can stop a war in the Caribbean and South America. The Caribbean and Latin America want peace, and the people of the United States do not want war. So we have to join forces, and with the favor of God, we hope that this initiative can be enforced. Fifth question from W Radio from Colombia. Good afternoon. I would like to ask you, President Gustavo Petro has assured the past days and also ratified the presence of irregular groups like ELN and FARC dissident groups in Venezuelan territory. In this weekend, we knew of the dismantling of 3 hectares of drugs in the border between both countries, and I wanted to ask you if your government can confirm that you have presence of these groups in Venezuelan territory, and also if you are looking into possible actions of the United States, as the U.S. has described you as an illegitimate mandate, and if this could pave the way for the United States to not recognize you formally. Also, your government informed of the reinforcement in security, and I wanted to know if you had information of how many security and troops were deployed throughout the territory, also in the borders. Next question regarding a saying of a U.S. authority regarding the possibility of sanctioning former President Zapatero regarding his closeness to your government, and also they've said that your government has paid the former Prime Minister of Spain for his closeness, and if you can confirm this. And also, you were saying that you do not discard the possibility of calling the country on arms. What would you need to happen in order to take this decision? Thank you. Very good questions. This is more like a podcast than a red conference. That's excellent. We are deployed at this moment stronger than before. We are exercising our armed sovereignty in all the territory. We had established a first binational zone of peace, and the coordination was working pretty well with Colombia. We know that Colombian military are Bolivarian, and we have received firm messages of solidarity with the Venezuelan armed forces and with Venezuela, that Colombian military see us as a sister nation. Truly, when I receive these messages, it means a lot from an emotional level, because I know that they love Venezuela and they see us as a sister nation, as part of the great homeland. Colombian armed forces, Colombian military, we are united for our sovereignty. We are deployed, for example, yesterday, General Padrino and the highest state They showed part of the seizing of the violence inciting groups from Colombia and armed groups from Colombia that are in that great area that is the border, sometimes cross into the Venezuelan territory. Every day we are combating those groups, the groups who are destroying the Amazon, the illegal mining groups, the irregular armed groups. Everybody knows that Colombia has and is leading a war that started in 1948 when they killed the great Gaitan at 1 p.m. in the afternoon in Bogota. That was known as the Bogotazo. And at that moment, a process started of assassination and persecution of the Colombian people. From 1948, then we had the guerrillas, you know, the liberal rural workers guerrillas. Then they had a negotiation of peace with the government, and when they went into peace, they killed all of those guerrilla leaders. That they were legendary because they were rural workers. Many of them did not know how to read or write. They were part of that Colombian people. They were strong. That's what Bolivar also knew when he came into that area, and those rural workers took the arms. Then they agreed on peace, and oligarchy killed them. Afterwards, with the example of the Cuban Revolution and Fidel, the guerrillas also appeared legendary at that moment. Manolanda, a rural leader at the moment, formed small groups, and he became the greatest strategist of the guerrillas of South America, one of the greatest strategists, such as Ho Chi Minh of the Colombian territory. And in the 60s, he founded the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the FARC, as rural armed forces in defense. This is a Colombian phenomenon, truly Colombian. In parallel to this, Camilo Torres, the Catholic father, he founded through the theology of liberation, a Catholic. They were killing all the Christian boys in all the rural cities. And he said, following the example of Che Guevara, because Che Guevara was so significant for that generation, he said, Father Camilo Torres, who also took the name from another great independentist, he took the arms and founded the National Liberation Army. So you had those two very insignificant forces from Colombia to Colombia. Other groups, other names were also founded in the 70s. In April of 1970, you had a great fraud to ANAPO, the organization that represented the forces of Rojas Pinilla. And they committed a great fraud. And in Colombia, you had an uprising. They killed hundreds of youngsters, and from there came M19, founded by many combatants. Among those leaders, in 1970, there was an urban guerrilla that was incorporated into the movement. Many of them university professionals and sons and daughters from the professional working class. The M19 shook Colombia. That's what I'm saying. This sounds like a podcast, because if you ask me so deep questions, we need to answer and go back to history and not just the headlines. So M19, its first action was to take the sword of Simón Bolívar, one of the swords of Simón Bolívar, and take it as a symbol of the struggle and present themselves as a Bolivarian guerrilla movement. Bolívar was so highly esteemed in Colombia, more in Colombia than in Venezuela before Chavez. Only with the presence of Chavez, he started being praised in Venezuela again, not to say it for the first time. So the government of Uribe, with the government of Uribe, they stopped reivindicating Bolívar and they started praising Santander, the traitor. So in the 70s, you had at least 3 important guerrilla movements: the FARC, the ELN, and the M19, and a number of smaller groups. So in Colombia, because of the repression of the drug trafficking oligarchy governments, you had thousands of guerrilla combatants of several generations from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And even the President Gustavo Petro, as Pepe Mujica was also part of the Tupamaros in Uruguay. In Colombia, you have as president Gustavo Petro, who was also a member of that young generation of the M19. That phenomenon of the violence that was called the violence, we suffered that as well. And just next to that process, in the 90s, we had the phenomenon of the paramilitary forces fueled by Uribe and that oligarchy. That's why you had so many Colombians that have fled from that violence over the years. And in the border, we have been victims of the Colombian violence, of Colombian drug trafficking. And any armed group that can pass that border to Venezuela will find the Bolivarian armed forces of Venezuela and Venezuela's constitution. That is the answer. What has Venezuela done? Look what I'm going to say. Let no one be offended by this, but with the truth, I cannot offend and I cannot fear. Venezuela, from Pérez Jiménez onward, we have tried to help towards peace. From Carlos Andrés Pérez in 1975, 76, we have tried to seek peace. Carlos Andrés Pérez I, Carlos Andrés Pérez II, Rafael Caldera, who handed over the presidency to Chavez. He had in the presidential palace in Miraflores. The ELN had an office and the FARC had an office in order to seek peace. Commander Chavez tried to help for peace many times. I was a testimony for that. Pastrana betrayed that peace afterwards. He was very close to Eastem, and that couldn't be any other way. So afterwards, Uribe, we had so many efforts made with Uribe. He led 200 paramilitary into Venezuela in order to kill Chavez, and even in that context, Chavez continued working towards peace. Then Santos, 8 years. Chavez helped him right until the moment that he passed away, and then I continued working towards peace, and we went to Cartagena with Celita, remember Celita? In order to sign the peace, and that peace was also betrayed. We could say that the processes of peace were always betrayed. To President Gustavo Petro, we have helped him, we continue to help him, and we will continue to do so beyond our limits in everything that has to do with peace, because Colombian peace is also the peace of Venezuela and of South America. So meanwhile, the armed forces of Venezuela under my command are defending the Venezuelan territory from any criminal group that can come from Colombia. Colombia has 8 military bases that Uribe allowed, such as Santos, in Colombia. So you can research that for any good journalists that are over there in many Colombian media outlets. I send you my greetings. Vicky is my candidate. Well, to all of those, you can continue the research, the investigations. I'll say it in Colombian. What happened with those military units? What happened to those U.S. military bases? I tell the U.S. government as well. 8 military bases. And they said, with those military units, the production of cocaine will be stopped, and it tripled. The drug production is 3 times as high, and it's not the Colombian government, it's not the Colombian military forces, it's not them. It's the oligarchy, corrupt oligarchy, willing to sell its own homeland. Those 8 military bases. You can look into what happened with those military units. What happened to them? Why didn't they work? How much money did they give to Colombia? Who took that money? Was it Pastrana, Uribe, or Santos? What happened with that money? It's questions that we have, and we are posing into the air so everyone can draw their own conclusion. Regarding the third question of this podcast that we are having here, the deployment of the military armed forces of Venezuela on Thursday, 2,500 2.5 million men and women deployed, seeking and looking for strategic points of interest and working towards the nation's sovereignty. Those operatives will continue to be carried out without any previous notice, under my command and led by the superior state, and also always close and next to our own people. At this moment, you know that we are strengthening and fostering our capacity of mobilization. It's truly admirable. The moral and the capacity of deployment in a record time of our national armed forces. We would say, paraphrasing Bolivar, but mentioning Chavez, that Chavez left a strategic concept, a military doctrine founded by Bolivar, and Chavez left us with a new military Bolivarian armed forces, reformed, renewed, and that is the way. Look, I can tell you, I can show you the images. We have no time to show so many images. The joy in the faces of those officials, of all of those who participated in that mobilization of the people towards the forts. Forts open across the territory. How does the system work? That's what they were trying to teach them. The gun machines and the tanks, they try to and learn how to deal with different types of armament. The professionals, the workers, construction workers, serious people, people of work. A friend of mine told a friend from his neighborhood who had enlisted, and he was surprised when he saw him because he asked what was he doing there. He was surprised because he saw him on television, and he saw him run and stand by and shoot and continue running. And what it is, it's a people preparing itself to defend its homeland. And so we are deployed, we will continue to be deployed. This crisis is an opportunity and has been an opportunity in order to relaunch our plans, to perfect them, to improve them, and with an infinite morality, to move forward to new levels that we didn't have before. Today we have more than what we had before, and we are fighting in order to continue. We are not trying to take anything away from anyone else. We are fighting for our own things, for our own land, for our own resources, defending our homeland, our family, and our country. That's what we are defending. We are defending that. As Bolivar said, luckily, we have seen a couple of free people conquer over powerful empires. And I can say that luckily, we have seen millions of free men and women training to defend their homeland whenever it be necessary in order to continue conquering over powerful empires, whatever they may be called. So the deployment continues. Colombia and Venezuela are just one heart. The people is just one. If they attack one of them, we'll be united, defending the homeland. We are just one, and we will continue to demonstrate that if it's necessary.
Well, the fourth question of the podcast regarding President Zapatero, I have not seen that threat that was made on him, against him. I did not see it. Former President Rodriguez Zapatero is an honorable man. He's a political leader from Spain. And that a subsecretary of the United States attacks him that way is truly embarrassing. I think that the Spanish people must come out and defend a former president that is being attacked by a lowly subsecretary. That's how we would describe him in Venezuela. A lowly subsecretary that I'm sure is getting paid, because those subsecretaries, undersecretaries, they get paid by the mafias in Miami for those posts on X, and I'm sure that he's charging for all those posts to the Miami Mafia to discredit people all over. What I know of Dr. Rodrigo Zapatero is that he loves Venezuela and that he has heritage that were here in Venezuela and that he's a man of his word. He made peace. He demobilized the ETA group. He must have some kind of value as a diplomacy man because he demobilized the terrorist group ETA. And Spain must come out in defense of their former president because Spain must defend its dignity and not allow that a lowly undersecretary attacks a leader of its country. That's the comment I can give, but I have not read anything. I'm following your words. And in fifth place, the fifth question of this podcast that is going well, right, Celia? This fifth question, I refer to it to Venezuelan military doctrine, and the concept of strategic defense establishes that there are different ways of struggle. We have the non-armed struggle and the armed struggle for defense of the homeland. And that struggle, until now, has been carried out through the non-armed. What is this kind of struggle, the non-armed struggle, which is in the doctrine, and it's important to explain and to the people and the media what the non-armed struggle is. Well, it's the work that we are doing here in Venezuela, that we develop education, which today began the school year, that health is developed, the people's power, the constant consultation, that institutionalities are strengthened. We have 5 public powers that are very strong. Institutionality, the institutionality of governors and mayors. The non-armed struggle, we also have the diplomatic struggle in the world. Everything that has to do with the struggle without using arms, weapons, to guarantee peace, sovereignty, the exercise of sovereignty in the territorial integrity. And also, we also have established the moving towards the next, which is the armed struggle, that can be local, regional, or can be national. For example, if our Bolivarian forces is patrolling an area and a group shows up that uses weapons against them, they have their doctrines and strategy, and they go quickly from non-armed struggle towards armed struggle. And it's an armed struggle that is very local. When we have talked about the concept of strategy for the whole country, is that if Venezuela were attacked by U.S. imperialism, immediately, according to that doctrine, to the Constitution and to the law of the Bolivarian Republic, Venezuela will go to the armed struggle, the whole country, and we would exercise the armed actions in the different localities, in the regions, and in all the places where it would be necessary to face the mercenary groups or the U.S. military invading, wherever it might be. That doctrine is very clear, and now is even more polished, has been perfected. So, what I've said, if Venezuela were attacked, Venezuela would go to the armed struggle in defense of the republic, and if it was a general aggression, we will go to the declaration of our republic in arms, which we will go back to the path of Bolivar until liberty. To end the cycle of questions, I give the floor to Ji Feimen, correspondent of Xinhua from China. Good afternoon, President. I'm a journalist from the Xinhua News Agency from China. I have 2 questions. First, what measures can Venezuela take to avoid that the United States once again boards and occupies ships in the economic exclusive zones of Venezuela? And the second question, if Donald Trump continues to insist with the idea that Venezuela sends signals and drugs to the United States, what impacts for both parts will this have? Sorry, the last question I did not hear very clear. The second, if Donald Trump continues with his narratives that Venezuela sends drugs and criminals to the United States, what will be the impact for both parties? Okay, thank you. Greetings to China, first of all. Very grateful for the clear, strong declarations of the foreign ministry spokesman. I received some presents from the President Xi Jinping for the 80 years of the great victory. In VTV and different television channels, we are broadcasting an important series of China, The Awakening of History. It has the same name as the son of Ali Primera that we could put at the end, from Ali Primera, Despertar de la Historia, Awakening of History. Greetings to all that are here on the screens. I did not greet you, and I ask for forgiveness for all those that are here on the screens. Greetings to the foreign minister that is over there seeing everything, the foreign ministry team, which are doing an extraordinary work. I see different ambassadors. I'm seeing the ambassador to Mexico there. He rose his hand. I cannot make the others because they look really small in the screen. I see someone moving. Well, my greetings to all the ambassadors, to all the different consuls in the world and social movements that are right now connected, watching this, and the Xinhua news agency from the People's Republic of China. What measures can Venezuela take to avoid that U.S. ships and world ships go through its economic exclusive zone, its jurisdiction sea? But the measure must be legal, through diplomacy channels of persuasion, of communication, of vigilance, that which we have, and we have them. In these 35 days of threats of war, is the first incident that happens of everything that they have announced. So I believe that the measures of persuasion, deterrent, and diplomatic, political, and communication measures have worked. So much that they looked for an incident in 8 hours, and we here in complete calm, tranquility, observing everything minute by minute. So there are measures, and the police authorities and civilian and military authorities of the U.S. must comply with the protocols, and they must abide by international law, from Venezuela as well as from any other country of the Caribbean. They must respect international law, and we remain vigilant, making sure that international law is respected and the fulfillment of the different protocols that must be complied with, that all countries do it. The second question, right? Let me check here the news. Well, here, from Apure, they are sending me an information right now. In Apure, right now, the governor is telling me an operation carried out today at 1 p.m. in the afternoon
captured some people that were coming from Colombia with packages I know that it was informed, so I can say it to Wilmer Rodriguez. So we're in a permanent combat. We have over 2,000 kilometers of borders with Colombia, and the whole border is hot 24 hours of the day, the 7 days of the week, all year, until in Colombia they manage to have an economy and peace that totally substitutes the drug production. We're going to manage that. We're going to achieve that in Colombia. But until that is achieved, we have to continue multiplying by 1,000 and using, as we do today, thanks to God and our friends from the world, we started to have the better technologies of observation and very good, excellent. What else is he saying? Maduro declared undone the communications with the United States and qualified as extravagant the actions against the fisher boat. Maduro says that communications with the United States are undone because of their threats of bombing and blackmail and things like that. Maduro says that communications with the United States are undone and is asking Trump for an investigation against the attack on the boat. BPI, hadn't that disappeared? That's the media from Guaido in Miami. Hadn't that disappeared? And Guaido wasn't he at the finale of the Open in New York? Didn't he have tickets? But they didn't want him to sit next to the boss. He used to be friends with the boss. Maduro says that he warns that Venezuela will do their legitimate right of defend themselves against the United States. I didn't say that. Alberto News, who also lives in Miami, right? You have to make better titles. He studied at a high school where I visited today. Didn't you know that, Hector? There are many things in life that you don't know. You have to know every day. Alberto News, Celita. Maduro affirms that the relationships with the United States are not in zero, but they're undone. Delcy Rodriguez. I can't say this. Jorge Marquez. I can't say this either. Correct. So the second question of the Xinhua News Agency. The second. Yes, I'm going to answer it here now. Another question, okay. Do you have another one? Okay, please. Okay, go ahead and I'll write it down here. Yes. Thank you. She barely had 2 questions and you each had 5 questions. Where is she from? Also from Xinhua. Go ahead. Hi, Mr. President. I'm a journalist from the Chinese media group. I have 2 questions. The first one is, in front of the rumors in social media about the alleged plan to bombard a Venezuelan tank. A bunker, Venezuelan bunker. Which is your official posture and how do you respond to this? And my second question is, the American President Trump once confirmed that he didn't have any intention of a regime change in Venezuela, but he has repeatedly provoked and was once again further and further. How do you see his behavior, his double-faced behavior? Correct. Thank you. Thank you very much. correct. So we still had to answer a question from Xinhua and then you. On the question from Xinhua, they have a very decisive line, a communication line that I don't think they'll change. There's no way that they change that. And it's to continue to repeat, unfortunately, the things that are lies about Venezuela. If someday that elite that governs the United States, if it ever were to reflect and realize that the truth they have in front of them, that they have enough reports, intelligence reports that are telling them the truth on the health issue that they have in the United States, the truth about the opium production that they left in Afghanistan, where they multiplied by 1,000% in the 20 years that the United States were occupying Afghanistan, and what is the truth on the cocaine production in Colombia. When they realize about the truth, they'll be able to do a plan if they really want to end with these problems, if they would want to end with these problems. In the meanwhile, they can continue with their lies, with their falsities, and we will keep in our country, building our country in peace with our truths, our serenity, and our right to happiness that won't be taken away by nothing or by nobody, not today, not never. Each one of us has a path. They have their war paths, and we have our pacifist path and Bolivarian. On the question of the information, the first question that I was asked was precisely that. I aspire that an investigation is made. Venezuela is doing an investigation on what was said. There's very important clues that the Minister Diosdado has announced. We're going to move forward on those clues, and it's evident that the video that was given to President Trump, President Trump should, in its faculties, also investigate it. Who shot those videos? What did they do? Who did they kill, allegedly? At what time was it? Where was it? Why did Secretary Marcos Rubio said that had been in a place of the Caribbean, and Trump said that it was somewhere else? So their opinions went against each other between Mr. Rubio, the Lord of the War and Blood, and what the President of the United States of America said. So that warrants an investigation, because it is very bad to give a video so the President pulls out in their own accounts and the implications, the political implications that has. And who did that? Who told him that that was like that or not like that? Well, we hope that investigations continue their path and they have a complete finale and clearing finale. On the change of regime, I believe that at this point, for real, journalists, social communicators, people, men and women from the world that watch us on the social medias, that's where people watch you. Look, people are not longer saying that Maduro is live on VTV. They're saying he's on a live. Right? I am all over social media right now. I'm transmitting in Telegram, YouTube, streaming, on TikTok, on Instagram, etc. So all of you who are watching us on social media, and those who will then analyze this podcast, all of those who see us at this point know that this military operation is for a regime change in Venezuela. They all know it. They all know that it is a lie. The justifications that Venezuela doesn't have mass destruction weapons, they all know that it's a lie about drug trafficking. They all know that it's a lie, the accusations. And everybody knows that the only truth is that they want a regime change. For what? To impose a government that they can handle and take handle of the petroleum in Venezuela. And by that, by taking ownership of the Venezuelan petroleum, G-Fay-men, and by owning Venezuelan petroleum, they will twist the arm of the whole world, to twist the arm of the countries on OPEC and all the producers in the world, and control on the short and long term the reserves, the biggest petroleum reserve in the whole world that is in Venezuela, and that it belongs to Venezuelans and will never be owned by anyone else from this world, because Venezuela will not be, again, no one's petroleum colony, not of the United States. That is the truth. At this point, in conclusion, that's a word that I say a lot, because the ministers, some of the ones are here, send me a lot of information, and I read it, and I drag my own conclusions, but when they're too long, I say, in conclusion, and I force you to think, so you can give me a proposal. These are methods, so I say, at this point, in conclusion, the United States of North America and the whole world, Latin America and the Caribbean, know that this is a military operation to look for a regime change, destabilize Venezuela, break it into little pieces like they did with Libya and Syria, and take control of our petroleum, our gas, our iron, and our gold. And that hasn't happened, and it won't happen. And in the name of God, Almighty Father, I decree the peace and perpetual sovereignty for Venezuela. So thank you very much, and let's listen to this beautiful song, The Awakening of the History. And with this beautiful song, I will thank you, the patience, and I wish that you enjoy a good lunch. Thank you very much.